Next person.
Well, I forgot a few things. They slipped my mind. Okay, people were talking about how it felt like Okinawa, and it was funny because it feels like Hawaii too. And I don't know like how many people have like family from Hawaii and Okinawa, but of course the history was a lot of those families immigrated to work on like sugar plantations or pineapple fields, which is what they were doing on La Isla. And so I don't know if there's a connection there, but I mean Okinawa and Hawaii and Cuba or some of these tropical places seems to be where us hairy people are comfortable. Another thing was, on La Isla, it was interesting to me that where the ceremonies were held was El Teatro Japonés, which was like pretty much the biggest building on like in Nuevo Gerona. So that was really impressive to me that the Japanese community there had such an impact on them. They were so accepted that they had this one of the biggest buildings, pretty much the biggest building in Nuevo Gerona. And another thing was that I did, well, like she mentioned, they do have a great pride in in their culture, and they in martial arts and with dance, they really have a lot of zeal with it. And it's funny because they don't really have like the right music or all the music, and they don't have the costumes, and yet they'll dance like in beat in time, but they don't have the right music, and it doesn't really matter to them, And one last thing I wanted to mention was one other thing that struck me was that there are no advertisements, no product advertisements, no product billboards or anything, like you're driving from the airport, and all the signs and everything are like revolutionary slogans or like pictures of like famous figures. And one thing I noticed in Havana was that there was a really strong military and police presence, like they're all over the place, military and police. And it seems like they're just there kind of like to protect the tourist industry, and tourism is like a cash cow, in Havana. And so there seems to be like there's a segment of the economy that isn't there. It's like what would be involved in retail marketing, sort of general business things here isn't there. And so there's like this farming segment, and then there's like people who go on professional things like doctors, engineers, school teachers, all the things you have here. And yet there's all the things that kind of are generated by by capitalism, all the sort of retail jobs. That segment of the population is missing. So you'll see a lot of young people, their big option, it seems, is like the military and the police forces, which they seem to be really, really big in Cuba for, whatever reason. So, okay.
Hi, my name is Veronica Calderon, and I'm actually not Okinawan, so it's a very interesting trip for me to go with the group, the Choodee Without Borders, and getting a perspective of the Okinawan community in Cuba. And it was an interesting trip for me, I would say, in knowing a little bit beforehand of the Okinawans from being part of the OAA and attending some of the events, and also being here today and learning what some of the other groups who attended before us brought to the Isla and brought to the Cubanchus there. And what I wanted to kind of touch upon today was kind of going through what we saw as a group and how the effects of the previous groups who went to Cuba and what they still practiced there even when we were attending the events. So we noticed that they still were doing the Shisa dance with the lion, and it was, I had an opportunity to speak to one of the people who was actually in the costume, and he was very happy to have learned the dances and be part of the Okinawan community there. And as you'll see in our video, they were told to basically perform just a few of the movements that the Tsukimi Kai group had taught them because they didn't want the people in the costume to be injured. So their dance was not as elaborate as they would hope to have shown us, that they wanted to show us the Americans and the Japanese and Brazilians of what they had learned from the group and still practiced even then. Also, we were treated to various ASA dances of the group there that they had learned from the Tsukimi Kai group again, and the NCRR group as well. And the first dance that we saw them do, they performed in their own kind of makeshift costumes that they had created. And as one of our group here mentioned that, yes, we were able to bring ASA costumes for them to have and to use there for everybody. So on the very last day at the closing ceremony, myself and Yuko were part of the group that helped them dress in the newly purchased ASA costumes for them. And that was a very wonderful experience to teach them how to put them on, how to put on the costume correctly. And they were all very pleased, and they were happy to have a complete ASA costume and be able to perform for the community properly dressed. So that was a lot of fun. A bit nerve-wracking to actually show them how to put it on, because I was there to help translate with the Spanish, and it was interesting to me to have to learn the Okinawan words for the costume pieces. So it was a learning trip for me as well. We also met Nariman, whom other groups have talked about as well, and she demonstrated what she had learned on the shanxing and had various performances at some of the different events that we went to. After being on the isla for a couple days and again, not really interacting very closely as we had hoped to with the families, and even now after leaving the isla, I'm on an email distribution group for one of the people who lives there, and periodically I receive updates of what events they have going on now. And they've had various festivities, Obon festivals, and it's very nice to receive pictures of how these people continue with the traditions and what they're still doing even after all of us have come and gone. And so they're still practicing the shanxing, the dancing, incorporating new dishes that they've learned, and also continuing to teach the younger generations with the music, the food, the dancing, and hopefully if I get to go back and interact with them again with everybody. So with that, we'll move it on to Yuko.